Hello, Internet, and welcome back to Kenter at Your Own Risk, episode 43, where Kent, Kevin, and Chris will be discussing our most underrated movies in the horror genre. Last month, we had a nice discussion about the most overrated movies. This is going back and fixing a little bit of a technical error we have, so you might be listening to them out of order, but now that we're back and here to begin the discussion, we will be kicking it off with Kevin. We discussed our criteria that we used last month, so we're not going to be going over that again. And so, Kevin, take it away.
Okay, so my criteria for underrated was movies that were universally hated, mostly bad reviews critically, which is not tough for horror films, as I said, and also word of mouth. And this is a perfect example. Number 5, The Lords of Salem from 2013, directed by Rob Zombie. 46% Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 30%. IMDb 5.2 and Letterboxd is 2.9. Box office was $1.5 million on a budget of $1.5 million. This is a movie that I didn't even like when I saw it 10 years ago. I did think the ending was crazy and over the top, but the beginning was really hard to get through because it's so boring. But the ending was cool, is cool. And the news report at the very, very end, right before or during the end credits, made the entire movie click the first time I saw it. It was the best part of the movie, not in like an ironic way either. It isn't a movie I would even recommend, but other people like hate this movie so much, including, I would say, the Rob Zombie fanatic. This was one, with an exception of maybe the diehards, like they really tried to see the best in this movie, but mostly people thought this was Rob Zombie's worst movie. And especially at the time, I think this was his third film. Or was it? No, this was right after the Halloween movies. So,
This was his
so it's
fifth or sixth one. Was this before 31 or after 31?
Before 31. So, yeah.
Okay,
So this was after Halloween
fifth.
2. So this was his fifth movie. And I don't know, like I would talk about this movie with well, specifically one friend, and he never finished it. He said that this movie was so bad, and then I, also didn't think that I liked this movie. And then I would be like, he hated it so much that I found myself defending it a little bit, and he never caught the ending of it because it was so hard to get through. And I kind of from there was like, maybe I don't hate this movie. Like I should watch it again. And I did try to watch it a second time before I watched it this time, and I fell asleep. But it was kind of late, and it is kind of the perfect movie to fall asleep to. But I really didn't suggest even like for him to watch the entire movie over again. So it was kind of like a weird place to suggest, like maybe you should just watch the ending. But I don't ever recommend that either to people. So when I found myself defending this movie, which I thought easily was Rob Zombie's worst movie, I kind of, when this came up, I was like, I'm going to watch that movie again and see what I really think of it. And it's a lot slower directing style. It's not, the camera doesn't move a lot. It's almost, I don't know, it's strange, but it's very effective to when you get to the ending, and it's so bizarre. And it was way more bizarre and I think effective the first time I saw it than even this time, because I was kind of waiting for it, and it didn't completely live up to as insane as I thought the movie was. But I've seen so much more, even since 2000. I don't know. It came out 13, so I probably saw it in 2014. But yeah, The Lords of Salem. it is not as bad as as I think that it is the shit that it gets. And very rarely do I, when anyone does talk about it in a positive light, they, always bring up how much hate this movie has. So, do you guys share the hate? Did you see it? Not so bad?
I haven't seen it, but I think Kent will probably have a few things to say about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Monsters bad, but it is the worst Rob Zombie movie I've watched. I've watched all of them aside from the Monsters from, House of a Thousand Corpses on. I still have a half-written blog because I tried reviewing it just this last October. I'm like, oh my god, this fucking movie just keeps going on, and it should be better. I want it to be better. Like, if you look at the cast is awesome. My guy, Ken Foree, he's back. He's in it. Jeff Daniel Phillips is awesome. Meg Foster is awesome. Bruce Davison. Like, so many people in this are awesome. And yet, it's the pacing, and I don't want to fault him because, historically speaking, if you look at witch movies, they are historically slow as shit. Like, they just are. The Witch is slow. Like, I don't know. I can't. Gosh, I'm drawing blanks on witch movies, but you know what I mean. Like, most witch movies have a very slow burn. So within that particular subgenre, this is probably pretty good, but I just don't like it. It is my least favorite of the Rob Zombie collection that isn't the Monsters. I wish I had something more positive to say, but I really am in that boat of negativity.
No, I think you nailed it because
Oh, the claws came out.
The witch movies were so boring. So even when I saw it the first time and would talk about it, I'd be like, man, it was so boring. But also, yeah, but most witch movies are boring. So with that, I had more fun with it than The Witches. That's the one that I think of all the time. I was so excited about that movie, and I don't know, they were not as great back when I was younger. They weren't as exciting as Freddy Krueger coming out of the television and saying, "Welcome to primetime, bitch." Um,
I gotta say though, I agree with you. That ending, like the ending's really good. It's one of those movies. I think we can mostly agree that a lot of times horror movies, the first half's usually better than the second half. In this case, it was like the last 10% of the movie was so much better than the first 90% of the movie, quite frankly.
and the telecast and the news report of an outside perspective of it, made it click, and it made it kind of creepy and eerie, but still, yeah, it is. It's a tough watch because it's so slow. And the cameras doesn't move.
For people with patience,
Yeah,
it's probably worth
like an hour and 40 minutes long. It's a movie that I watched I didn't like, but it's kind of grown on me in time, even without rewatching it. So that is why it's on the list. But I'll end it with that. And Chris, you haven't seen it.
No, unfortunately, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. Sorry. I mean, I could comment, but
all right. So the thing about one other thing about it is, it kind of makes fun of the witchcraft genre through the radio DJs with all of the wacky noises, and kind of criticizes radio DJs also. And I think it's the closest to an art film that we've ever gotten from Rob Zombie.
Absolutely.
So, all right, moving on. This is a good one. Number 4, Hannibal, 2001, directed by Ridley Scott. 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score 62%. IMDb 6.8, which is pretty decent. Letterboxd 3.2. Box office pretty successful. $351.6 million box office on a $87 million budget, which is a lot of money in 2001 and today. Was not a very well received follow up to the highly anticipated Silence of the Lambs due to it being highly anticipated. We get Anthony Hopkins back as Hannibal Lecter, but we don't get Jodie. Instead, we get our national treasure, Julianne Moore. Uh, and in this psychological horror crime thriller, it starts off as more of an action film because we, got Ridley Scott this time instead of Jonathan Demme. And the opening shot, it's got a mother with a machine gun getting gunned down, holding a baby. This is great. Gary Oldman is unrecognizable in another great lost in the character performance, who is kind of a bad guy also to a villain to our villain, Hannibal Lecter. Ray Liotta in a role that seems sort of generic until we get to the climax. And this was Ridley Scott's follow-up to his Best Picture winning Gladiator. So the stakes were high for this movie, I think, in every sense. And it's much different in tone and aesthetic to not only, we'll say Silence of the Lambs, but we'll say Manhunter also. Maybe a little bit closer to Manhunter than Silence of the Lambs. I think it's much better than I gave it credit for when it came out. And it like a fine Chianti, it gets better with age. It might not be a better movie than its predecessor, but I do think it's a better horror movie and a better ending to boot than Silence of the Lambs. It's definitely crazier and really lays on the shock in the gore factor. So, in a discussion of is this a horror movie or not that we brought up earlier with Silence of the Lambs, you can kind of talk about that now with Hannibal. Do you guys think this is a horror film? It is one that, like, it's when you look up horror films and you see Hannibal in the horror section on HBO Max, you're like, that's not really what I was sort of looking for. But, Ray Liotta eating his own brains, having a conversation, is probably is more horror than an action film. So, all right, guys, what do you think?
Go ahead, Ken. I want you to hit this up because I know you did a lot of research on this recently.
I'm just going to say this. I haven't seen Hannibal in so long that my memory's bad. So to touch on what Chris wants me to touch on, I don't consider it a horror movie, and to use Chris's favorite phrase on the podcast is most definitely horror adjacent, which, I guess falls into horror. I'm not sure. It's clearly like a thriller. I don't know where the line is. Like, if you say the primary genre is something and then the secondary genre is horror, yeah, okay. Is the secondary genre even horror, or is it the third? I don't know. Like, these movies, they're creepy, they're good, they're gory, they're all kinds of things that make it feel like a horror, but at the same time, I'm going to say it's not horror, but I don't fault you at all, because you're in the majority of people that would say, based on seeing it on HBO in the horror section, and probably if there were video stores still out, I don't know, if video stores still existed, would it be in thriller? I don't know. But I don't know. It's underrated. It is underrated, whether it's a horror movie or not. It is underrated. That's where I can comfortably land with this.
All right. So one thing I'm really glad is they changed the ending, because in the book, Clarice runs off with Hannibal as his little fucking serial killer love child bride, which is like
off.
It just feels like a letdown for the character. But yeah, it's underrated. I mean, this is where I fall on the is it horror argument. And I think horror broadly encompasses three aspects that a movie is trying to make us feel: a sense of fear, a sense of unease, and a sense of disgust. And I think if a movie is primarily evoking all three of those, everybody universally will gladly say it's a horror movie. But I think a case could be made if a movie inspires any one of those three senses, it could fall into the category. Because, let's be fair. Is anybody going to deny that Scream or Halloween are a horror movie? But what separates a serial killer like Hannibal Lecter from a serial killer like Ghostface outside of just a sense of aesthetics? And potentially, just maybe a little bit more in-your-face violence over the course of the movie. All sorts of people find different types of things scary. It's been a long time since I found a creature feature scary, but serial killers can usually manage to disturb me. I think in certain situations where we're talking about maybe something like Zodiac, which I don't think of as a horror movie, but I think it's definitely one of the most unsettling movies I've ever seen, considering how, each scene is just basically designed to make you feel uncomfortable. I don't know. But, if you were going to say this is horror, I wouldn't argue with you. If you were going to say this is predominantly a thriller, I wouldn't argue with you. But I think, for the most case, thrillers like this should be classified as a subgenre of horror rather than excluded from it. A lot of the people on your Facebook post seem to want to do, Kent. So
I was surprised at the results. I thought if anything the numbers would have been reversed. I really didn't try to sway anybody's opinion. I just really asked a straight up genuine question, and I was shocked. It was 20-3. I'm more inclined to agree with you. There's just no real way of saying this is horror, this isn't, because every time I've tried doing that in some particular way, there's another movie that comes up. I'm like, well, that's definitely horror. Well, if that's definitely horror, why isn't this horror? And the fucking rabbit hole runs.
It does. And in any case, considering what we fucking say on this podcast all the time, as long as you're horror adjacent, you're fucking solid and good to go. As much as this is underrated, though, if you've ever seen the show, Hannibal I didn't think anybody could do a better Hannibal Lecter than Anthony Hopkins or Ronnie Cox, because I really like Manhunter too, but Mads Mikkelsen just fucking, he took the role. He is Hannibal for me from now on.
Oh, cool. I have to check that out.
I hope at one point we're able to do that as a podcast.
What is it on?
Right now it's on Hulu and Tubi.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I will, I'll have to check that out. The thing about Silence of the Lambs, and I want to bring this up, because I know I made a point on Kent's Facebook that the comparison to Henry, a Portrait of a Serial Killer, but Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is a horror because there is a spree of killing people. Silence of the Lambs, the serial killer, Buffalo Bill, doesn't kill anyone in the whole span of the film. He kidnaps the girl. He's killed people before the movie, but the only people who really get killed is at the end jailbreak scene and it's Anthony Hopkins, and that shit is cut out because it's because we don't want to know that guy is actually dead. We think that he's getting strolled out of the police. So the kill count in Silence of the Lambs is 3 people, maybe. I don't know. It's and none of them is Buffalo Bill. So it has this whole other tension, and I honestly wouldn't consider Silence of the Lambs horror if
Kevin, can
I
I
didn't
just throw
see
something
that.
at you?
Yeah.
How many people died in Nightmare on Elm Street 5?
3.
Isn't that weird? Just using stupid numbers like this, I'm like, yeah, I agree.
But the serial killer doesn't kill anyone, and that's crazy. I think that's makes it a more interesting film than Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Or is it 4?
No, come on. Nightmare on Elm Street 5's the the golden goose there, man.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Let's stop dissing on Nightmare on Elm Street 5, otherwise I'm going to have to think about it again.
Um, no hate, no shade, no shade. Okay, so yeah, all right, so we're good on that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
What
Moving
you got
on.
next for us?
All right, number three, Jennifer's Body, 2009, directed by Karen Kusama. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 46%, audience score 35, IMDb 5.4, Letterboxd 3.5 out of 5. And the box office was 31.6 million on a budget of 16 million. Um, this movie I also didn't don't think I was super impressed with the first time I saw it. But it's great on so many levels, and I don't think I understood how smart it was on the first watch. I mean, I definitely didn't understand how smart it was, and that's probably because it's the horror comedy genre, and I guess the previous success of the writer Diablo Cody, who did Juno. It's like Heathers and Carrie and American Werewolf in London and Evil Dead 2 and Return of the Living Dead and Rosemary's Baby all shook up and has its own like original and and it's not a cheesy ripoff and it has like a modern feel to it also. It's uncompromising as a horror and in its comedy at the same time. Megan Fox wasn't a fan of this movie for being sexualized as a teenager, just coming off the Transformers franchise, which is a shame because I think this movie is actually her best performance. She's funny, she's scary, she feels real like a teenage girl who's, trying to be much more mature and older than who she is, than her age in the movie of being a teenage high school student. And and especially when she gets in the van, because it's actually like the one part of the movie where you actually feel that she's this like vulnerable, over her head teenage girl, and not this like confident girl who's getting shots at the bar. Um, and it's the scariest part of the movie, along with the flashback when we, get to see what actually happens in the van, and which takes it from this like at that point in the movie when we get the flashback, like it's this like LGBTQ coming of age film right into this intense abduction film that we kind of saw earlier to like the satanic cult and then straight into meta comedy and it works. It's much deeper than the superficial beauty that we put on Megan Fox. And probably Megan Fox is deeper than that also. Um, just like her character Jennifer. Also, Amanda Seyfried is terrific, who I'm a giant fan of now, and this is probably the first movie I saw her in, uh, along with Adam Brody, and of course we get J.K. Simmons in a funny part. It's Roger Ebert actually gave this 3 out of 4 stars with all of the hate thrown around about this movie, and called it Twilight for boys, which I don't think I think that is a disservice to the film, but that was what was big in horror at the time for teenage horror films was Twilight, and then we got Jennifer's Body, and it was this whole other thing, and it kind of does have the feel of all the like sexual horror films of the 1980s, but done in a really great way. And this movie is has been reassessed, and there are some essays about the bisexual lesbian themes of the movie and all of this stuff. There are it is reassessed and is thought of in a positive way, so it is not totally universally trash, but it is a movie that that I don't really I think maybe someone was like, oh, it was all right, but most people really didn't like it at the time, and I do feel like it might have been the writer of Juno on the cover might have because that was a movie that if we were doing just overrated movies, that movie might be on it, but I do like Juno a lot. Um, but I've seen it a lot of times, a lot more times than Jennifer's Body. So, what do you guys think?
I think a lot of the hate came from Megan Fox for whatever reason. Yeah, she might not be the greatest actress, but after that first Transformers movie, she just got fucking shat on all over the place. And yeah, movie is a lot smarter than when it came out. It was just shit on all. I mean, I remember people saying this was just fucking horrible, and it's not bad. It's much more intelligent than it appears to be on the surface. So yeah, I mean, like you, I've seen one of the YouTube reviewers that I follow just speak over about this movie within the last year about how it's a hidden gem. So, I mean, there is that.
Yeah, I saw this in the theater actually. I don't get the hate for her, even from a Transformers perspective, because all hate and blame should go to the writers and Shia LaBeouf. That much is obvious. She deserves no hate, no blame. She looked great. She played her part as well as could be asked, considering the role that she had. I don't know. I don't see a reason to think anything less of her for that. And yeah, she was good in Jennifer's Body. I have no shame in saying that I bought that on DVD. I own it on digital. I saw it in the theater. Like, I had fun with it. And, yeah, I came in like, okay, I want to see this hot chick and whatever. But, like, I walked away saying, that was a pretty damn good movie. So, I agree.
Oh, great. Yeah, I definitely am going to own this. This is definitely a Blu-ray.
And I straight up didn't remember that Chris Pratt was in it either.
Yeah, it's a very small part. But yeah, that was kind of like and the music was good. It was, and it was very timely of the time. So it's just, I guess, yeah, the Transformers thing, and really, Michael Bay, I don't know. I know that Megan Fox was really upset with Michael Bay for sexualizing her, and she was, I think when she made that movie, she wasn't 18, right?
Yeah, she was
She
younger.
was younger, and she was made to be this like sexual thing. And I mean, I'm not gonna like defend Michael Bay. I mean, I get where she's coming from, but like Michael Bay, everything about like his movies are like the way he films helicopters is sexy, and it's just the aesthetic of it. And I think that maybe working with like a 15 or 16-year-old girl, he kind of like, I don't think he was like sexually pining over Megan Fox, but when he's making a movie, he wants everything to be sexy in it. So from the helicopters to the explosions to the, CGI. But yeah, Shia LaBeouf talked some shit after, and then he talked shit about the Transformers movie. So I don't know. I love Shia. And I have some respect for Megan Fox. Um, and even the whole Me Too movement that came out, she was like, "Oh yeah, me too," and like all the feminists kind of shit on her also. So she's got like a shitty, you know, no one really wanted to hear what she had to say, which is, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. But it's she got shit on in every direction, she's just doing her job. So
Yeah, for sure.
all right,
All right,
moving
what you got
on.
next, Kevin?
Dreamcatcher, 2003. This is my number two. Directed by Lawrence Kasdan. Rotten Tomatoes, 28%. The audience is 35. IMDb is 5.5. Letterboxd is 2.4 out of 5. Box office 75.7 million on a $68 million budget. This is a movie that I didn't realize that was so poorly received at the time, and I really wouldn't if not for the internet. So when 6 years ago, when I started building my movie collection again, I would movies I've seen a whole bunch of times, like Dreamcatcher, and I've read the book. Um, Having the internet on my phone and like realizing the greatness of you can read all of these, Wikipedia and all these articles, and you could go and just read, Roger Ebert's review of the film uh, when it came out, and it, I didn't realize how badly people hated this movie because I saw it, thought it was good, and I read the book, and it was better, but I thought it made the movie even better. I mean, for a cheesy sci-fi horror, this movie is great, like really great. Some of the CGI is dated, but some of it, like the alien parasites, I think it looks, I think it holds up. It looks pretty good. The cast is great, and the story is a lot of fun. Um, if you look up worst Stephen King movies, Dreamcatcher is on most of them. In the last 10 years, Stephen King has said it's the worst story novel of his, which has hurt it, I think, because, well, especially with the Stephen King fanatics, because if he says his version of The Shining is better than Stanley Kubrick's, then that's what other people are going to say also, whether it's their own belief or not. Which has, I love the book, and the movie is really close to it up until the end. Um, it was a critical and box office bomb, and the reason it's on the list is that it actually hurt director Lawrence Kasdan's career. And this guy wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark and Empire Strikes Back, and he did a Body Heat and The Big Chill were his big movies. Wyatt Earp, and it took them 9 years to make another movie, and that movie was uh like a $12 million budget compared to this 75.7 million. He had a couple different projects in the works when this movie came out, and they one with Tom Hanks, and it just went nowhere. They put him in they call it director's jail for a long time, and that movie that he made, Darling Companion, 9 years later, has Kevin Kline, Diane Keaton, Diane Wiest, and they all worked for scale, which is like the like least amount of money they can pay someone in the Screen Actors Guild. So, um, I think this movie has a good word of mouth, but if you on paper it is trashed a lot. So, um, what do you guys think of this one?
We talked about this in our Stephen King review, didn't we, Kent?
Oh yeah,
I fucking love this movie. I mean, the one good thing we got out of The Sixth Sense was that we got to have Donnie Wahlberg play Duddits because of that.
I did it.
I really like this movie, and again, as another example of being shocked when you find out that people didn't share the same feeling. Like, I had never seen Damian Lewis before. I fucking loved him in Band of Brothers and Billions. This is where I really think like Timothy Olyphant started growing as an actor instead of just being, like the guy from Scream or Go. Tom Sizemore didn't go like fucking over the top crazy here, so that was always good. Jason Lee's scene in the fucking bathroom is awesome. Who would ever imagine that, calling something an ass blaster would be, like a fucking actual scary thing, but it works. Morgan Freeman kind of feels a little bit underused, but, what can you do when you get somebody like Morgan Freeman's caliber to play like a kind of tropey role like that? But no, I thought it was a cool idea, a cool movie. I think a lot of the criticism it gets is because it riffs so close to It in a lot of ways, and It is probably a better story overall. But I love the book too, so I don't know. I really enjoyed it, Kevin. I would agree with you. You know what? I'm sad that this didn't make my list. Fuck you, Kevin.
Yes.
I actually asked Kent. I actually asked Kent if it was going to be on your list because I was like, I knew you guys talked about this, and I think we talked about this a little bit when we did the people getting the cube like one. Yeah, the random strangers or whatever
Yes,
we
gotcha.
mentioned this movie, but it didn't fit the criteria. But yeah. All right, Ken, what do you think?
The first time I watched it, I didn't like it. The second time I watched it, I liked it a little bit more. And then the third time I watched it, I was like, oh, now I like it. So it's one of those movies where I liked just enough where I recognized something just enough that I was like, I gotta give it another shot. I remember reading, I feel like this was on an ESPN.com article of all things, a guy comparing this to The Outsiders and Stand By Me. And I was like, all right, give this a shot. And at the time, I really didn't know, we know all like 7 of these names were like friggin' household names in their own way. But at the time, I really didn't know. Aside from Morgan and probably Sizemore, I don't know if I knew the rest of them. And I think at first I was just kind of put off by the shit monster whole idea. Like I was like, well, that just okay. But once you get past the shit monster idea and you realize like this is like about this like long friendship thing, and I don't know, it works on so many levels. It really has become a lovable Stephen King classic. I mean, it's no Maximum Overdrive and certainly no Sleepwalkers, but it's right there. It is a classic that does not get enough love.
Yeah, when Chris mentioned it, I was like, yeah, it's like that cliche of like, of Stephen King of like, let's get a bunch of kids together and like in the 50s and let's have them find a dead body or look for a missing kid. It's always a missing person,
right? Yeah, it really is.
But I love all of those movies. So. Okay, so all right, so we're off to my number 1. Hollow Man, 2000, directed by Paul Verhoeven. Rotten Tomatoes is 26 critics, 28% audience. IMDb 5.8 out of 10, and Letterboxd 2.7 out of 5. The box office was pretty good, 190.2 million on a budget of 95 million. So it did okay. Doing Hollywood math, anyways. This movie, despite turning a profit with and getting an Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects, doesn't get the love it deserves. The reason that this movie is number 1 on my list is because it needs to be number 1 on somebody's list, and I love Paul Verhoeven. He's one of my favorites, and more so in recent time, I've gone through and watched his movies, and he said this movie could have been made by 20 or so other directors, and it didn't really feel like his signature style. And I disagree. As a giant Verhoeven fan, I feel like this is coming off of Starship Troopers, and this isn't probably as groundbreaking as that movie is. But I feel it's closest to Showgirls, as Showgirls is the All About Eve, but made by Paul Verhoeven, twisted, perverted tale, and I think Hollow Man is The Invisible Man, kind of done the same way. It's the framework of a generic sci-fi thriller meets a slasher, especially with the camera, the point of view of the camera where you feel like you are the slasher, and this point you feel like you're the Hollow Man lurking outside people's houses. And it's got that signature sleaze that I love from Paul Verhoeven, with that crooked smile, sense of humor that I love. It starts with our antagonist peeking through the blinds on his neighbor, And maybe at that time you wouldn't realize that this person is a villain, but I think now retrospectively that is one of the things. I didn't like this movie when it came out, and I think it was because you identify with Kevin Bacon, or I identify with Kevin Bacon because I've always known him with outside of Sleepers. For the most part, he's always kind of like the hero or the main guy. So seeing him as bad guy, and he's the Hollow Man. Maybe also the confusion of seeing something kind of like Dark Man. Uh, I don't know. It's just weird. It was weird at the time, and I definitely didn't appreciate this movie. But as soon as this guy gets any power at all, um, of being invisible, he starts groping his coworker, which is played by Kim Dickens, and which is like an impressive special effects shot, but also super uncomfortable, and invisibly groping her, putting unwanted advances on his ex, Elizabeth Shue, to raping the neighbor he saw in the very beginning, like with the framework of this invisible man for the modern age, which I believe all of that stuff is kind of ahead of its time of how sleazy this guy is from the beginning. And then, if you think of the invisible man who was a doctor and then he kind of goes mad, which they kind of put that in with the movie, that he kind of, the serum makes him go crazy. But before the serum, this guy was kind of a scumbag, just waiting to come out, just getting away with no one really knowing who he is, especially his scientist partner and ex-girlfriend, played by Elizabeth Shue. Um, it's he's like ahead of his time with the mirror images of messages of misogyny in this movie. And it does take a while for it to really become that sort of slasher style horror, but from the very beginning, it establishes real world horrors of having to put on thermal goggles to make sure your pervy boss isn't watching you pee. This is stuff that we think about today and probably wouldn't have then. Uh, yeah, I don't think anyone would have made this movie. And it is, to be fair, sort of a generic horror film or sci-fi film up, except that it has this distinct touch. And I watched the director's cut. I've seen this movie a few times in the last year, and this is the first time I watched the director's cut in a long time. And the things they cut were like kind of this amazing shot of him on each side of the girl on the mirror, and they cut it for the theatrical version, but the camera actually goes behind the mirror while you're watching this girl, get out of the shower, and it's quick, but you don't see the camera, and it actually has, to me, that is like cinematic movie magic that they put into this movie, and which probably lives on at best, midnight on the Sci-Fi Channel, where all the good stuff is cut out. But it takes a while, but the ending's crazy, and almost too much in a very short period of the last half hour of the movie. But the special effects are awesome, and yeah. So, what do you guys think? Agree? Disagree? Have you seen this anytime recently?
I've never seen the movie. I've had many people tell me it's my type of movie, and just based off your description, that says a lot about me as a person, I think. So it sounds like a delightful romp. Something that I should watch. I really like the cast, but unfortunately, that's about all that I can offer. Other than apparently, there is one little scene in this that was in Saw 2. So that's me chipping in my 2 cents.
All right, so this actually hit on one of our podcasts before, and it was on my worst horror movies ever. So, yeah, I would
Fantastic.
just slightly. It's got a great soundtrack. Yeah, I'll give it that. You're right on a lot of the ways that, like, Sebastian is a really cool antagonist. And I think a lot of people weren't expecting that from him, especially with the way that it was marketed. Although, like, I don't know how you couldn't see where it was going with the Invisible Man story. I would have just liked to see it be a little more grounded, because when you get to the end, all of a sudden Sebastian is superhumanly strong, able to impale people and lift them up with one hand, jumping all around, from the ground to on top of pipes with like no issues, gets set on fire, doesn't faze him at all. So he goes from being just an invisible human, which is, a huge advantage in and of itself, to being like this movie monster. And that's where it lost me. You are right, though, that fucking breast manipulation scene is one of the most impressive special effects I've ever seen. And a good reason that this movie works as much as it did was because Kevin Bacon played Sebastian. If they'd gotten somebody less charismatic, or who was more overtly chauvinistic, like, I'm thinking, Peter Facinelli wasn't the bad guy in the sequel, but he was in the sequel. Like, if they had cast him as Sebastian, it would have fucking sucked. So, I would disagree with you in my opinion, but again, it's just my opinion. So, I'm glad that we had something that we all didn't agree on, though, on our list, because if we were all just kumbaya together, it would be a much less enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and I expect, and this is why it was number one, and I really, I don't know, it's, if you look up, the worst Paul Verhoeven movies, or like a rate, I looked up a few different rankings of his movies. Hollow Man is number 17. He's got 17 movies. Every time. It's number 17, and I don't think it's his worst movie. It's definitely not his best, and it's probably somewhere in the middle, but because I watched this movie, so after COVID, at work we had a TV, and we had free Cinemax or something on our TV, and I would watch it, and I didn't remember that Hollow Man was rated R. I wasn't as familiar with Paul Verhoeven as I probably should have been, so I played this movie in TV, and I work at a homeless shelter for families, so there's kids that come through the office, and it was around Halloween time, I think, and they would come in and they would see the plastic, the rubber mask, and the looks on their faces, and I was like, oh, this movie is way more sexually charged than I remembered, and I didn't realize that it was unedited. So you got, even if it was the theatrical cut, it's pretty harsh, all the way through. And I was like, I should definitely watch this movie at home. So I don't know. I think it was that low bar of it. I just thought that this was some, I don't know, sci-fi film, but
I saw the newer version of The Invisible Man, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't great, but I would love to see a mix-up between Hollow Man and the Invisible Man remake that they just did. Somewhere in that middle ground, I think, is a fucking perfect horror movie.
I saw a video. Oh, really quickly. I saw a video that said that the Hollow Man and the Invisible Man are the exact same movie through opposite perspectives, and I didn't watch it because I haven't seen the Invisible Man yet, but that it's really close, scene for scene, in the way they do things. It's crazy.
Have either of you ever seen 100 Feet?
No, I have not.
No. Sounds familiar.
It deals with an invisible man. Famke Janssen kills her abusive husband in self-defense. She's sentenced to house arrest, and she can only move, 100 feet, whatever. And the spirit or entity of her dead husband just tortures and beats the holy hell out of her throughout the movie. So, it definitely was inspired by The Invisible Man, and probably, partially Hollow Man as well, because it came out 2008. I would definitely recommend it. I don't know where to find it, but if you can find it, I would recommend it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks like it's only on
Added it to my
Blu-ray.
watch list.
Okay. All right, Kevin, that's a good list.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, you guys ready for the shit show that this is going to be?
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't think it's too bad. All right, so my number 5 is a 2019 movie, actually. It's got a 6.5 IMDb rating and a 78% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So this Rotten Tomatoes has it higher than Event Horizon, but this is lower on IMDb than Event Horizon. On a budget of $70 million, it made back $467.5, so it wasn't as successful as its prequel. But my number 5 is It Chapter 2. And
I predicted that one, Kevin.
I really enjoyed the first one. Don't get me wrong. And my biggest thing is just, this came out and people were like, oh, it's such a letdown. It's fucking a shit show. It's horrible compared to the first one. And it's not. It's not as good, but it wasn't bad. I mean, you didn't have Pennywise biting off fucking a kid's arm, in the first 3 minutes, but you did have him biting into a fucking girl with a mole on her face, or a birthmark on her face's face underneath a set of bleachers. So yeah, I mean that's literally my argumentation, is that it's nowhere near as bad as what everybody said it was. We're missing a couple things that I would have loved to have seen, like I believe in Santa Claus, I believe in the Easter Bunny, eat battery acid scum, would have fucking made me so happy, and we don't get that. And they definitely pushed the Bev, Bill, potential love shit going on much farther than it needed to, than they did in the books or the miniseries. But, and I mean, they changed up the ending enough, so you can definitely say it wasn't a literal reproduction, but I enjoyed it. I thought it wasn't bad. I mean, it's good. Should be, higher praise, but that's about the limit that I can come up with for that. But that's why it hits on my number 5.
You can start on this one, Kat.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Chris and I will forever just be miles apart on our feelings on this particular film. As Chris was going on, I brought up my blogs just to kind of see what I rated and wrote and all that stuff. I gave It Chapter 1 an 8.0, which is incredibly high on my blogging scale, because I don't go up to 10s, I only go up to 9.2s. And I gave It Chapter 2 a 5.0, only on the merit that there's probably going to come a day where I'm like, I want to watch the whole It movie, like Chapter 1 and 2, and inevitably I'll watch it again, and maybe I'll like it more. Like, the acting, the actors, like, it was a good cast and everything. I will say that traditionally I find the second half of the story to be way worse. And so I can't fully blame the film for something I already knew to be true. I mean, the original It, as much as I loved it, the miniseries, yeah, the first half was better than the second half. I appreciate the story better. So naturally I'm going to dump on the second half. With that being said, I felt the runtime was exceedingly way too long for what it provided. And there were times I just kept checking, like, the time. And I think that's like the death knell for movies. Like, if you're sitting there, like, actively checking your watch or whatever, it doesn't... I don't know. That's not a good sign from my perspective. With that being said, I own it. I do love the story. It's just the first half is not as good as the second half for me, and that's okay. I mean, I'm just happy. I am just happy because I predicted 2 things out of Chris's list, and since I got Pet Cemetery wrong, I'm really happy to got this one right. So,
Yeah, I actually thought that this actually It Part 2 is a potential on my overrated list because I came because I heard people through word of mouth only that it was better than the first one, and then I didn't really think it lived up to that. Uh, it is. I do like it. It is good. Um, I watched it part one, which I only saw one time. So recently, because that was one potentially for the overrated list. I didn't make it to it chapter two because I don't know. I just didn't get to it, but I really wasn't. I didn't like it part one as much as I did the first time I saw it because I never saw Stranger Things before. But now that I've seen Stranger Things, I'm like, oh, they just turned it into Stranger Things. That's what they did. I mean, and I know that Stranger Things is very Stephen King, Steven Spielberg inspired. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I wasn't as impressed with it as I was the first time. Uh, so I might actually like it chapter two more than I did the first part. But I do agree with you, Kent, that the mini series and the better part of the story was the kids in the beginning, and uh, the second part of the mini series, the ending is like the creature is so bad, and I remember like watching it so bad, and like when I saw it as a kid, it was great, but when I like watched it in my 20s, I was like, this is so bad, and then I would say that to people, and they'd be like, well, that's exactly what it was in the book, and I'd be like, but I bet it was way better in the book because Stephen King is so descriptive, and the technology just couldn't do it. But more or less, it has the spider creature at the end, and it looked good. It wasn't as dark though. It part one was not as dark as I remembered it the first time around. It was so light and bouncy, and didn't have the real terror of a missing child, you know, clown killer monster thing uh, that it had when I was a kid, which it probably wouldn't. But um, yeah, I think I don't know. I'm interested to see. I'll definitely check out it, chapter two uh, sometime soon because I just saw part one a couple weeks ago. So
I have a quick question for Chris. The ritual, I think it was Mike that found the ritual that they were doing where they had to take something of value, treasured, whatever. Was that in the book?
To be honest, I don't remember, but if it was, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't in the same form that it was in the movie. That was one of the biggest changes that I remember.
Okay.
All right. So my number 4, and this is probably going to be my closest to a hidden gem on my list, but it's got a 6.5 IMDb rating, which puts it lower than Event Horizon. It's got a 68% Rotten Tomatoes rating, which puts it higher. So Rotten Tomatoes, in most cases recently, I think it gets it wrong, but on my lists, for the most part, gets it right. Against a budget of $1.5 million, it only earned $31,000 back. So, it's obviously not overrated in terms of budget, but I believe you've seen it because I'm pretty sure we've talked about it before, but from 2008, a movie called Pontypool, which was a Canadian horror movie.
Huh. Did I not just recommend that to you, Kevin, like a week or two ago?
yeah, I didn't get around to it, but yeah, you did.
Oh, no shit.
You son of a bitch.
Go ahead. I'm excited.
You're going to watch it soon? Well, are you going to watch?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I won't go into too many. It's a zombie outbreak without being a zombie outbreak, and the way they do it is fucking interesting as hell. It's something that I have never seen done in another movie, and you'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Kent?
I never would have thought of it, and at first I wasn't sure if that was how they were going to go with it, and how they were going to continue on with that in a movie, and it just kept building. And the pacing was good. It was very unique.
It is a fucking cool movie, Kevin. I don't want to spoil it for you because I want you to see it, but yeah, it's just like everybody I know who's seen this movie loves it. The only problem is I only know like 2 people other than myself who've fucking seen it. So that's where it runs. It's one of those ones where it was like, this is a great idea, and it didn't have the marketing budget in order to make it back. And probably the fact that it was Canadian in the first place kind of limited that budget to go along with it. But Stephen McCaddy is great in it. Lisa Hoole's great in it. It's a really good movie, and I would recommend it.
Unfortunately, it's also like a little bit on the pricey end as far as like a movie, now 15 years old, only on DVD. It was going for like $15 to $20 at its cheapest on Amazon. I was like, either way, I'm still going to buy it, but I hate spending more than like $10 for a DVD nowadays.
It does feel like a ripoff, but sometimes,
Sometimes that's the only format.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not even available. I don't believe there's any place to buy it digitally. That's what I would actually rather spend $15 to get digitally than to just get the DVD.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, because then you have to deal with the fact that, a couple generations from now, DVDs might not even work anymore.
Right.
But anyways, since you haven't seen it, Kevin, I mean, I'm assuming there's not much to say, so.
Yeah.
No, I think we've hyped it up pretty good, but I really think Kevin will enjoy, because it's just a genuinely unique idea.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It's on AMC, it says, so it's on my watch.
Yeah, that is definitely one worth watching. All right, so Kent, if I was going to pick a number movie from one of the franchises that we've gone over a little bit further back, which one do you think I would pick?
Scream 2.
Well, we actually haven't done Scream as a franchise, have we?
Oh, shit. I don't know. No, we didn't. My bad. Franchises, we've only done 2, so... Yeah, okay, so you're going to go with Saw 5?
Close.
Saw 6.
There we go.
6?
Saw 6. I remember when they were coming out, because it was boom, 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 year after year. Eventually, after once it started hitting 4, 5, 6, people were just like, who gives a fuck? It's a fucking another Saw movie. And, before we did the franchise one, it had been a while since I'd seen some of them, and I hadn't gone through and watched the whole series at all. So, going through, I was like, 6 was a fucking surprise. It was not the best filmed one. I think the quality was probably the lowest in terms to the cinematography out of the whole series, but it was probably one of the better plotted ones, and it had some really interesting devices, like the one where he has to choose who he's going to murder out of his former coworkers. That was, and they're all getting the chance to plead with him. That was, a pretty cool, like Sophie's Choice. Yeah, on the merry-go-round.
Right.
Then the ending twist was one that I didn't see coming. I won't go into it too much if you haven't seen it, because I don't want to spoil it for you. But again, this is another movie, 6.0 IMDb, 45% Rotten Tomatoes, so this is both worse than Event Horizon. But you can tell why they kept making them, because on a budget of $11 million, it made back $69.7, and they did it, in less than a year. So yeah, I really enjoyed, even the shittiest Saw movies up until Spiral, I really enjoyed. Going back, I think it's got a really great through line for the entire series. But this one, I think, stood out from the latter half of this series. I would say that the first couple aren't really underrated, because I think people, acknowledge that they're pretty decent. So I don't know. I mean, Ken, I know you and I've talked about this before, and Kevin, I don't know if we ever went over Saw 6, but what do you guys think?
I saw Saw 6. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Kent.
I'll just quickly add that I think maybe in 5 to 10 years down the road, if somebody were to sit down and just watch the franchise without like knowing much about like what the reviews were, I think in time Saw 6 is actually going to grow to be one of the 2 or 3 most popular of the franchise. I just think still like the recency of it, I do think that people are just like, well, who the fuck cares about part 6 at this point? But in time people kind of discovered these latter ones as hidden gems quintessentially.
Yeah, so
also, it stars the guy who played Boggs from Shawshank.
I remember that guy. But yeah, I saw 6. I did talk about it. I think we did in the shoot the shit section. It was one of the movies I saw recently. I saw 6 and 7, and I bought the first 8 movies on. I haven't seen Jigsaw yet, but I bought all 8 movies for like $10 in a collection or October time, so I could watch them during Halloween time because I wasn't really familiar with them. I watched the first one when it came out. I liked it. After the second one, and I think, like as you said, Chris, that people do, the first 3 I think were all really popular. They made a lot of money. $100 million on a $1 million budget. A lot of them, or like a couple $1 million. It kind of grew a little bit, the budget, but yeah, Saw 6 is great, and I think it is catching on. As I just caught up with it, when people do talk about the Saw films, I think 6 is mentioned as top 3. Someone specifically said, besides number 1, Saw 6 is their favorite, and I kind of feel the same way. And it's just kind of like you got to give it to number 1 because that's the one that grew it, and it's a cheap movie, and it was successful, and it was scary, and and it was mysterious. And it had a twist, but it wasn't like a crazy twist that changed the whole perspective of the film, but maybe a little bit, but not entirely, like something like Sixth Sense. Yeah, Saw 6 is great, and that scene with the shotgun merry-go-round thing is easily the best scene in any of the movies, I think.
And I'm not gonna lie, even now, like every time I hear that music kick in, yeah, I fucking, my heart goes up to a place, a good place for me. But I don't know. I didn't realize until recently, like how much the theme song fucking really, like, nailed it for me. Just for the whole series. And then we have Spiral, but let's not go there.
Yeah, I still got to get through Jigsaw, and then
Jigsaw is like Jigsaw's like an average movie, but Spiral
felt good at the time. It has sat like in the pit of my stomach, just causing horrendous pain.
I will say I liked the graphicness of the kills. Some of them that we saw I thought were really pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was the best thing I've heard of the movie. From anyone who's seen it, I've not heard a single good thing. It was good at the time. This is the best I've heard, and that was like 2 years ago.
It was like in the midst of like the first few months of the pandemic, maybe like 6 months in, so like everybody's starving for some kind of entertainment, so that comes out, and it just felt good at the time, but rewatching it, it's like...
And, I mean, part of the problem, too, was like the trailers were really good for the movie. It gave you hope. And then you saw it, and you were like... Yeah, all the best parts were in the trailers. All right, so this is my number 2 and my number 1 are what really tells me that Event Horizon is overrated. Okay, so my number 2, a 6.4 IMDb rating and a 63% Rotten Tomatoes rating. So it's a little slightly higher in Rotten Tomatoes, but it should be way higher. It was on a budget of $1.5 million. It only made back $1.7 million in the theaters, but this is a 2001 movie called Session 9.
Nice.
Yeah. You've seen it too. You've seen it, Ken. I mean, I know we've talked about this before. I think this is...
I can now take it off my list. Thank you.
Oh, did you have it on your list?
No, that honestly, I'm genuinely grateful because I had to make
Oh, okay, good.
So thanks.
Good. Because this is like one of the best low-key horror movies. And, I mean, think about how they film it. It's mostly shots of men sitting around fixing up an old asylum, just listening to audio. And it's so fucking creepy, it's not even funny. But the couple scares that they try to do, like the scene where the guy's down in the basement with the flashlight, and then the lights start going out, and he's trying to run faster than the lights are to be able to get out. I mean, those are really well committed too. It's got a great cast, a great script, and I really should have paid attention because I've never looked in to see what else Brad Anderson did, but he did The Machinist. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I just really enjoy this movie. Like, I would talk this up to anybody who said, "Hey, what's a good non-graphic horror movie to watch?"
Very, very creepy.
Fuck you.
Yeah. I worked at a video store when this came out, and I heard like really good things about it, and I was like, David Caruso's in it, like.
Yeah, I was there the same time too.
Yeah, and that was like actually kind of the same thing with like the Mothman prophecies. It's like people would say, like, "Oh, this movie's really good," and I'd be like, Richard Gere's in it," like, and but I digress. Session 9, really good. When I did finally get around to it, I was like, "Oh shit, everyone's right," and of like the 5 people that I know that saw it,
Yeah, that's the problem with some of these movies. Like, they're fucking great and nobody sees them.
Yeah, no, it is. It was super creepy. I definitely owe it a rewatch. But that's also a movie that's on like along with Jennifer's Body. It's like a underrated horror film and definitely a hidden gem.
Yeah, I rented this when it was like one of the new releases at Video World. I kind of thought the cover looked pretty good. And so, I mean, that was 20 years ago, and out of all movies that I recommend or show to my friends, this is probably number 2 behind Cube. Because it's one of those movies that's it's scary enough, but it's also kind of on the tame side as far as score goes. So you have a friend that's not really into gore, or, a little iffy about hardcore horror. Maybe you don't want to show them Martyrs, but you can show them Session 9. And you can have a good time with it. And to me, what's funny, well, aside from David Caruso saying, "Hey, fuck you," which is probably my most played YouTube clip of all time, Larry Fessenden. I didn't even know he was...
Dude, I just saw that looking through this. I'm like, oh, Ken's going to fucking shit his pants when he sees Larry was in there. Who the fuck was he?
He was the dude that got stuck with the lights. I'm pretty sure that was McManus. I'm pretty sure he's the guy that's in that scene.
You know what? I bet you're right.
It's such a good scene. It's so fucking good. Like, this movie is so much better that it should not be as good or as entertaining as it is. And it always gives me hope when I see like other kind of like asylum movies, and I'm like, all right, if it's decent, I'll just be happy. Like Grave Encounters, for example, was actually significantly above average, believe it or not. But by and large, asylum movies, they don't do it. But this one did it. So kudos, great pick, and once again, thank you, Saya.
Oh, you're welcome. That's an inside joke, guys. All right, so my number 1, and this is how I fucking know that goddamn Event Horizon is so fucking overrated. Has a 6.5 on IMDb and a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, which both put it under Event Horizon. And on an $11 million budget, it only made $25 million back. So it wasn't a resounding success in the theater. But this is the 1990 movie, The Exorcist 3, also known as Exorcist Legion in some places. I don't know, what can I say? The Exorcist is, like we spoke earlier, renowned as maybe the best horror movie ever. I mean, I'm sure there are people who can argue it either way. But it was definitely a high act to follow up, and The Exorcist 2 is usually not regarded anywhere near that. But The Exorcist 3 has a couple of just fucking phenomenal performances going on between George C. Scott, Brad Dourif, Jason Miller. It's got some of the creepiest fucking scenes in there, too, between some of the shit that the Gemini serial killer does, but like the scene with the fucking old lady with the shears, she gets me every fucking time. I don't know. I almost prefer this to Exorcist 1, and I know that's a hot take, but like we've done best sequels before, and this was one of the top ones on our, I don't remember if it was both of our lists, but definitely mine. I don't know. I can't hype this up enough. I mean, I wasn't a George C. Scott fan before I saw this movie, but afterwards, I fucking recommend, just overall him as an actor.
Okay, well, this will be easy. I've never seen it. It's on Hulu though, and George C. Scott. And actually, when you said Exorcist 3, I confused it with Omen 3, and I was looking for Sam Neill, which I also have never seen. So I think it's Omen 3 with him. But yeah, Brad Dourif's in it. I'm in. Scott Wilson.
Yeah, it's got a great cast. I didn't realize how many of these people I knew back when I saw it too. So
yeah, I wouldn't have appreciated him until up till a couple of years ago.
And Scott Wilson.
Scott Wilson, yes.
Herschel.
It can't be worse than Exorcist 2, which is okay in like a goofy sort of way, but of like bad movies that can be entertaining, but
oh, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. So you know this movie pretty well, Kent?
Oh yeah. I only discovered it maybe, I don't know, we'll say about 5 years ago. I discovered it, and I think I may have watched it right around the time when Scott Wilson died. So it was probably actually maybe within like past 3 years or so. And I was blown away because I'd always heard Exorcist 2 was awful. And I don't know, I just kind of, whatever, I just ignored Exorcist 3. Didn't bother looking at the cast. Had I would have seen Brad Dourif and would have given in. And it was just such a delightful, like, it really holds its own with The Exorcist 1. Whichever one you prefer, it's almost to me like Evil Dead 1 2. I don't care which one you prefer. I just don't think there's a large enough gap. Like, it's cool. Just love both movies. It's cool, man. And the old lady scene, so good. So
it's, I would say this too. It's probably got one of the best. I mean, I know people don't like them, but it's probably got one of the best jump scares I remember in a movie too.
Oh, I hate jump scares, but that jump scare is well done. Jump scares are fine if they're not overused. Like, you get one good jump scare in a movie, perfect. But then you get Insidious.
I like jump scares. I mean, The Quiet Place had a pretty good jump scare, and then I saw A Quiet Place 2, and in the theater, I don't remember a lot about it. I remember that I liked it, but I did almost drop my popcorn like really early into the movie, and it's kind of, sort of embarrassing. But yeah, I do appreciate a good jump scare, but I don't think it is synonymous with terror.
I like when they give us a fake out and then a real jump scare, and it's effective.
Yeah.
But yeah, overuse is something that should be strayed away from. But that's my list. All right. I'm interested in hearing what Kent's got to go with.
Okay. I'm going to start off with my usual honorable mentions really quick. Once again, I'm trying to use this, like, the same ideology using the spreadsheet. So I'm kind of going away from unknown gems. I'm going with movies that I was shocked didn't appear on more lists. And it really surprised me how underrepresented slashers were. So just to group a bunch of things together that had minimal to no appearances, like the original Friday the 13th only showed up on 4 out of 11 lists. And that movie kind of, in and of itself, created like this whole subgenre that dominated the freaking 80s. So maybe put a little bit more respect on the damn movie. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 only showed up twice. Freddy vs. Jason, which we all agreed was a really good, fun movie, showed up on no list. And although not necessarily a slasher, I'm just going to throw in Saw. Saw was only on 3 of the 11 list, and once again, I feel that Saw, however you feel about it, I feel like Saw is kind of like a top 100 horror movie. I feel that's a very safe take, but apparently more lists disagree with me than I would like. Another movie that I found very underrepresented, surprisingly, was Shaun of the Dead. And my theory is that maybe people just view it more as a comedy and not enough of a horror movie to put it on the list, because it's universally loved. Like, has a 92, 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, has a 7.9 on IMDb. So I think that's a fair assumption, is people just don't view it as horror. With that being said, and I did remove Session 9, my number 5 movie came out 2009, and this is a movie everybody I kind of talked to seems to enjoy. The House of the Devil. It had this cool 80s vibe to it. It was a good slow burner. If you're into the slow burners, I really think you would enjoy the movie. And yet, once it only appeared on 3 lists, had a 66, a 77, and an 88. But if I look at IMDb, it has a 6.3. It has an 85% for audience, like on Rotten Tomatoes. It seems to be liked, so I don't understand why a movie like this didn't appear on more lists. It's a relatively... It's recent, but, I mean, now it's 14 years old. So it's not so new that, like, I can understand why Barbarian isn't on the list, because most of these lists were made before Barbarian came out. But I think most of the lists probably have came out since after House of the Devil. So I'm confused why it's not on list. Also, it has Tom Noonan in it, and who doesn't love Tom Noonan? I don't know. I think both you guys have seen it, right?
I haven't. No, that's probably why. I mean, yeah, it's not getting more play.
Oh, yeah, no, I
Kevin,
did see this. I saw it on Criterion, actually. And I told my dad about it, because I was like, my dad would really be into this. And he, like, loves it. Like, he was blown away by it, because it's, like, it is a slow burner, but it's like, how long is it? Is it even? Yeah, it's an hour and 33 minutes. So, like, slow burners at an hour, like 90 minutes, like, it never gets annoying.
It feels slow, like the first half, but it has a good pace. But I think some people just want bang bang scenes, and this doesn't. It tells a story.
Around the time of, like, what are we talking, like Saw 6, Saw 7, 2009.
Yeah, like the end of the.
Yeah, where it's all like bang, bang, bang. So, yeah, this is more of like a 80s horror film. I think it's based in that time. I don't know, maybe not, but is it? Yeah, and it
83.
has that feel.
Yep.
Greta Gerwig is in it. I think Ty West is kind of. I'm not to say that he doesn't have a fan base, because he does, I think, but I think he's just exploding now with X and Pearl and Maxine
With
coming out. I
X.
think that like people will now probably check this out more, and things like Criterion, who can get the rights to it, will put it on their thing, and Peacock, more people will keep it in their content, as like, people who are like me, which is there's enough people like me, but the smaller fraction of moviegoers that are director based. So you're like, what else did this guy make? So, but yeah, it's really good. I think the ratings were too good for me to put it on my list, but yeah, overall, I think anyone who's seen it, I think, likes it. I think just not enough people have seen it.
I think that's fair. And you're all fine with everything on my list. Their movies actually got good ratings. It's just
Oh
that
yeah,
they didn't appear
yeah.
on
Well, we
many
all have our
lists.
criteria.
So
Sure.
that's kind of, yeah. So, but Chris, I do think you would like it too. And once again, it's only an hour 35, and it's on my Vudu.
Yeah, I'll take a look for sure.
Okay. My number 4, which appeared on 0 lists, and is not a horror predominantly. It is a Western horror, which should give it away, is Bone Tomahawk. I don't know many people that have seen it other than the people that I have specifically either shown it to or been like, yo, go watch fucking Bone Tomahawk. Despite it having a really, really good cast, I don't really think a lot of people know of the film's existence, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I don't even think did it have like a theatrical run? I have no idea, but I don't ever remember seeing anything really about it. It has good 7.1 on IMDb, 91% and a 74% at Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's what the users, the audience, and then the critics or whatever. I don't know how that goes. The thermometer in the audience. I don't know. Whatever the fuck those numbers mean. They're still good. And with a cast with Kurt Russell and fucking Patrick Wilson, Matthew Fox, old Richard Jenkins, Lily Simmons, and David Arquette, and the great Sid Haig. There's a lot to love in this. It's definitely, I don't want to say it's like a love letter to the Westerns, because most Westerns didn't have like this horror aspect, but it's like this really nice mesh. It almost kind of reminded me a little bit of something like Out of the Hills Have Eyes, I guess. I feel, Chris, you've seen this. I don't know, Kevin, if you've seen it.
Yeah, I fucking love it. I fucking love it.
Yeah, me too. Also, I told my dad about this movie, and he also fucking loves it too. He's like, oh, you can't go wrong with Kurt Russell, especially if it's a Western. But, and my dad, is definitely put his love of horror onto me. So, when I saw this, I was like, I figured my dad would like it. But, yeah, I was introduced through S. Craig Zoller. I saw Dragged Across Concrete first, and that's pretty cool. And then I think I saw this, and then I saw the Brawl on Cell Block 99 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I like all of his movies. This one is great. I mean, I could see if you saw this one first, the other ones might not hold up, but all of his movies are pretty cool. And this is, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Lost, so seeing Matthew Fox in something that seems completely against type also, because usually he only gets type roles. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, this is a fucking great movie. It's amazing. It's also really graphic, so if it's not gore isn't something that you're into, definitely skip this one. But
if you're not into watching a person get, possibly split down the middle,
yeah,
seeing
a dude get split down his asshole. I mean, yeah.
God, that is really one of the few. If we ever did a graphic scene podcast, I don't know where that. It would definitely be in my top 10, though. Like, it just stays with you.
But it's a really interesting concept, executed well, great performances, fucking amazing movie. And yes, it looks like it only grossed like under $500,000 in its theatrical one, which is probably why we never bothered hearing of it. But apparently word of mouth was good enough to enable him to get Brawl in Cell Block 99 and Dragged Across Concrete made. So
it was probably like not a lot of theaters. It was probably like Chicago, LA, New York.
Yeah, the bare minimum needed to. I think it released in UK first, so probably over there, and then like film festivals, and that was about it.
And of course, I gotta give much love to David Arquette for liking my post on Facebook when I reviewed this movie.
That's pretty cool.
And I know David's
That's pretty cool.
Obviously.
Yeah. So, all right, we kept two people happy.
David.
2 people happy this podcast.
Yeah. Wow. All right. My number 3, and this is a really universally beloved movie. Surprised that this showed up on only 2 lists, and we're talking about top 100 horror lists. Once at 39, once at 95. I'm talking about the 1980s vampire classic, shirtless guy playing the motherfucking saxophone, The Lost Boys. How the hell did this movie only make 2 lists when it's arguably, I think there's a significant number of people that if they don't say it's their favorite vampire movie, they may be inclined to at least say it's in their top 3. Like, I don't know a single person that doesn't like The Lost Boys, and I just thought it was like one of those movies. I don't know. I really thought it was going to be on like 10 or all 11 of the list. I just really, maybe I take them film for granted, but to me it's just got everything I kind of wanted, and there's so many iconic aspects, which once again I kind of thought would have helped make it on lists, but here we are, only 2 out of 11 lists. No love for Kiefer, Jason Patrick, the Coreys. I don't know. Makes me sad. Are you guys surprised that it didn't crack more top 100 lists?
Fuck yeah. Jesus Christ. What the hell's wrong with people?
I'm kind of like torn between it because I don't feel like it's Halloween in October unless I watched The Lost Boys, but I feel like I'm not really surprised that it's not like the best horror movies, though this was a very serious video store rental movie for me as a kid, and it was terrifying and scary, but I think it's more of like that MTV generation. It's like more of like a pop culture thing than I think synonymous with horror. It's more of an 80s film than a horror, than, like, I guess the like if you think of cliche type 80s film, you probably think of Lost Boys, but not as a cliche horror film.
When I think of the film of the 80s that best represents the 80s, Lost Boys comes up like in my top 3 or 5 movies, because it's a huge representation of that era.
So I don't know. I think you kind of get lost in the mix. I think, but also I know a lot of people think it's overrated as a vampire movie.
Do you punch them in the face?
No, I mean, who knows? Whatever. People don't like the Lost Boys. I mean, it's super popular, despite not making the list. I don't know, but I could see like it should be on there. It should be on like top vampire movies. And what are the review? What was the reviews for The Lost Boys? I didn't even look it up because
it got a shit. I got a 76 thermometer, 85% for audience. I don't have the IMDb. I don't know why I don't. I thought I did.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's close to it.
It's well regarded, and
It's 7.2.
To me, there's so many vampire movies that show up on these lists. So maybe people are just like, well, we gotta have Dracula, gotta have Nosferatu, gotta have Vampire, gotta have fucking Hammer, fucking Christopher Lee Dracula, and maybe they just kind of say, fuck Lost Boys, fuck From Dusk Till Dawn, because that was another movie that was severely underrepresented. So I don't know, maybe there was like vampire fatigue in these lists. I don't know. It's just very weird to me. So, made me angry.
Is Interview with the Vampire on there?
Hold that thought for 1 second. I'm actually on the Eyes Interview. Nope. It goes from In the Mouth of Madness to Invasion of Body Snatchers. So, Interview didn't make any of the list.
Oh, that's crazy.
Shockingly.
But yeah, that's kind of the same thing, because Interview with the Vampire, I don't think it's really looked at as a horror film. It is a vampire movie, but it's kind of has this grander scope of what it is. To say that Interview with the Vampire is a horror film and then you see it, it's to me, it's like an American
it's just
classic.
as much a drama as a horror.
It's a great American classic period piece, Yeah. And so in that aspect, I think The Lost Boys kind of lays in there in sort of a similar way. But I'm sorry, Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, Kent, where the fuck did we put it when we did our best vampire movies? Was it number one for us?
I mean, we had it very high, both of us. I don't know if it was number one. I think it might have been my number one.
Yeah, it was definitely. Fuck, that's a long time ago.
It was.
And I mean, it also, I believe it was our number one for, well, at least mine, for best music in a horror movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Cry Little Sister, People Are Strange. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fucking great movie, and the fact that it wasn't on any fuck those people, fuck them all. I'm sorry, I'm not.
I will tell you guys something really quick, little story. Probably about a month ago, I had a dream where I kind of reimagined a few scenes. Like, I found this director's cut of The Lost Boys, and like I fast forward to see like these additional scenes that were cut in. My dream actually kind of made the story pretty decent, and I was kind of proud of my brain for having a relatively well thought out dream. So, yes, I dreamed of The Lost Boys. That says about me, but I'm
Nothing wrong with that.
all right. Number 2 is my cheat, and I'm just saying anthologies in general, but I'm just going to say two in specific. Well, all right. So if you look at something like Creepshow, has a 6.8 on IMDb, a 65, and a 68 on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, that's fine. That's respectable. But you go to Creepshow 2, it has no appearances on any of the lists. It has only a 6.0 on IMDb, a 29% on the thermometer, and a 41% on the audience. And I sit there aghast because I feel people of our age, I don't know many people of our age that like horror that doesn't really like Creepshow 2. I consider I don't want to say a linchpin of the 80s horror, but I don't know. I don't know. When I think of 80s horror, it's definitely in the short conversation, I would say, and I was surprised it got just no love in any of the lists. And then to go, 20 years down the road or however long it was, and I go to Trick or Treat, which is, a very well-loved movie. And that only had 4 appearances. I thought that would have more because of recency bias. Like, I know people, decade younger than us really loved the movie because, they probably saw it when they were younger. It was one of those things that they hold dear or whatever. And all in all, I just felt that anthologies were just really underrepresented in the list to a shocking degree, and I guess Trick or Treat and Creepshow 2 are my two best examples of surprises. Does it surprise you, or maybe it shouldn't surprise me that anthologies didn't make it? But I don't know. I guess I feel weird that there's no anthologies really.
It doesn't surprise me because it's hard to. I mean, when you have multiple directors, possibly, multiple stories, who knows? But I mean, if Creepshow's on the list and Creepshow 2 isn't, The Raft is probably the fucking scariest segment out of all of them. I mean, I know we've talked about this before ad nauseum. Same thing with like Trick or Treat. Like I have my fucking Sam costume in the closet still, so. That might not have come out as I intended it to go. I mean, we keep our old Halloween costumes in the closet, not,
Tell us more. What about you, Kevin? Are you surprised or not surprised by this revelation?
Well, Creepshow, for sure. I think Creepshow is, I don't know, but that's like part of my childhood. Anything to do with, it was Stephen King and George Romero combined.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a superpower. I mean, when I was 8, it was so good. The Raft was my favorite, but was it The Hitchhiker too?
Thanks for the ride, lady. Thanks for the ride.
And Chief Woodenhead was the first one.
That's probably, yeah. That one doesn't age well, but
no, it does not.
Like even just like the CGI of it, but yeah, I love those movies. Trick or Treat was better than I thought, but than I expected going into it. But yeah, what was another anthology movie? I don't know.
Tales from the Hood got no love, which I wasn't surprised by, but simultaneously, that's a great anthology movie.
Tales from the Dark Side.
There's a bunch.
That's what I was thinking, actually.
I don't know. I was really, really surprised, but I guess Chris does make a good point. When you have multiple stories, multiple directors, usually you're bound to have one that you really, really like, one that you may not like as much, and then maybe some middle ground. So maybe it's just, I don't know, I just thought everybody liked Creepshow 2. And I was wrong. Okay. With that, my number one is a movie that I believe Chris already brought up today, but not in his list, just brought up. With only a 63 on the thermometer, a 62 audience score, a 6.8 on IMDb, this delightful 2012 scary movie starring Mr. Ethan Hawke called Sinister, which is without a doubt in my mind one of the top 10 best horror movies of this millennium or century, whatever you want to fucking call it, like of the 2000s. It's really one of the 10 best scary movies. I don't know how much argument there is to be made about that. It's not like a slasher. It's just a well thought out, scary ass movie. I don't know people that have seen it that were like, it wasn't good. No, fucking movie. People almost always like it. And the thing is that it did not show up on a single top 100 list. Not a single one. Fucking Babadook, Hereditary, some of these modern artsy films, which I like, don't get me wrong, I love them. But how are they on there but fucking Sinister isn't? It's maddening, and I won't stand for it. I just don't know how to find whoever made these 11 lists and, I don't know, threaten them with a dueling glove or something. I don't know. But that's what I want to do. I want to threaten these people with a dueling glove. So, yeah, thoughts?
Sinister rules. It's so good. Even the twist in it, which I was kind of expecting that the movie somehow was going to get cheesier or something, and the twist in it was really, really cool. Not to get into it, in case anyone hasn't seen it, but yeah, Sinister was really good. I heard great things about it. Um, and I saw the Black Phone first, Scott Derrickson. I definitely want to dig deeper into his movies after seeing Sinister, and it's a movie word of mouth that I've heard nothing but good things about, especially from you two guys. And it's yeah, it is in recent memory, and I do as a fan of Ari Aster and Hereditary and Midsummer that it is more of a solid horror film, and it's like a horror film, and it's good, and you don't get a lot of those anymore without it being some sort of like genre bender, like say Barbarian, which is also really good. But if they did make a modern list, that's probably a movie they would put on in there before Sinister, and that, yeah, I agree with you. That would be a shame. A disservice to Sinister because the movie is creepy as hell, and I just love the idea of it.
All right, so Sinister is probably in my top 3 favorite horror movies of all time. I fucking love it that much. The idea is creepy. It's well acted. It's not gratuitous. So, I mean, you could show some. This is a movie that you could show to people who are grossed out by gore, and they should still enjoy it. Bagul is fucking creepy as fuck in this one. The kids are creepy. Like this is part of the reason why The Purge scored so low for me, because coming off of this with Ethan Hawke, we got The Purge as his very next film. Looking back on Scott Derrickson, he did one of the later Hellraisers that I actually enjoyed. I didn't realize that he did it. Deliverance from Evil is okay. It's got a great actual exorcism scene in it. But yeah, I can't praise Sinister highly enough. Sinister 2 was okay. It's not anywhere. It could have made under it. It's not anywhere near as bad as people say it is. But some of the design choices and the fact, probably due to the fact that he wrote it, but he didn't direct it, can be attributed to that. I think partially because Marvel had hired him to begin pre-production work on Doctor Strange at the same time. So, one of the things that leaves me with hope, though, is that after Sinister 2 was a bomb, they said that they would still like to do stuff with Bagul, and they are talking about whether or not this will still happen, using him as a villain in a future Insidious movie. So hopefully that will remedy your problems with that franchise and remedy everybody else's problems with the Sinister franchise, and we'll just get the best of both worlds. And we can hope.
That would be amazing. That really, really would be amazing. And you're right. I didn't know he did the Hellraiser Inferno, and I didn't know he did Exorcism of Emily Rose. I liked that movie quite a bit too.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah, it baffles me because if I think of like all like the criterias in these lists, like. Or if you don't have recent movies, I get that you have Get Out and you have Babadook, you have Hereditary, but you don't have Sinister, and it just feels kind of like I don't know, did not enough people see Sinister? I wonder if that's a legit issue. I thought a lot of horror fans did, but maybe they didn't. I don't know. But, alright, we didn't kill each other after all of this, which I'm happy with to an extent. A murder on the podcast would have been interesting.
Yeah, I still respect you guys.
But,
yeah. All right, so I know it's only been a couple weeks since our last podcast, but I've seen a couple things in the interim that I just wanted to get your thoughts on. See if you guys have seen it. One that I watched, because I still have a subscription to Paramount Plus for some reason, Krista, is Scream 6. Did either of you guys get a chance to see that?
no, I wanted to. I got on Paramount, saw that was on, and I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize it was out that quickly, but I had other pressing matters that I'll get to in my segment, but no, I didn't get to it yet, unfortunately. I've heard it's much. I heard it's better than what I would have thought it was going to be based on the locale.
What about you, Kevin? You didn't get a chance to see it?
No, I didn't. I wanted to. It's on my list. I have actually not seen a lot of movies this year that came out this year, and highly unlike me. I guess maybe I'll get into that. But my brother saw it in the theater, and he said that it's really good, and he liked it a lot, and he thought that 5 was a little bit overrated, and I saw 5 in the theater, and I liked that. I thought it was pretty good, but yeah, I love the Scream movies, but I think I skipped this one. I saw the last one in the theater. I'll probably go see the next one in the theater.
I'm kind of mixed on it because I really fucking liked it, but I could see how people would have issues with it. Some of the kill, like Ghostface, this is the first time I feel like he's not a fuck up, if you know what I mean. Like, watching him go through some of the earlier Scream movies, it was almost like watching a fucking Scooby-Doo episode. You know, with like, anytime somebody threw something in front of him, he was tripping over it, or if they opened like a freezer door, he was getting nailed in the face. He felt fucking vicious, and like the scene in the bodega that they kind of showed in the trailers, I don't know if you guys saw it, it's fucking awesome. It's one of the best scenes in the whole fucking franchise. At the same time, though, this was the only Scream I've ever watched where I was able to guess the fucking killers before I got to the fucking end. So I don't know I don't know how to feel about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if there's any way, like, watching Scream 2 for the first time to figure out that it's going to be Timothy Olyphant and that fucking Laurie Metcalf is Mrs. Loomis. Like, how the fuck would you even think to know? You might be able to guess who they were, but you know why they were doing it. I don't think that's going on. Or Scream 3, guessing that fucking Roman is her brother by, you know, Maureen Prescott. How the fuck are you supposed to figure that out without any fucking clues? So I don't know, but I figured this out, so that kind of dilutes it a little bit for me.
My question is how did it hold up without having without Arquette and, like, I'm drawing a blank on
Campbell.
her, the other girl. There we go.
Dude,
Jeez. Is it felt?
I miss Dewey. I miss Dewey's fucking theme song. We get a little thing of it from like one of the Courtney Cox scenes. But yeah, it's felt for sure, because like they make sure to put in that, you know, Courtney Cox is talking to the two girls from the new main characters, and she's like Sydney called. She just wants to let you know that she's praying for you, but she's not coming. You know, she's got to get on with her life. I was like, that's fucking low.
That really is, because you know, a movie like this, you know you're gonna make back the money, so just fucking pay Nev a little bit for a small cameo and make everybody happy. I'm still annoyed with how that whole thing played out, but it's not my money.
And I'm really interested in seeing what you guys feel when you've seen it, because like I really enjoyed it, but the two people I work with who saw it both like were shitting on it. They're like, "Oh, it's a fucking shitty movie."
Scream's kind of an easy target. I mean, any of them.
I don't know. Yeah. And then I've been kind of, I wouldn't say going berserk, but having fun with your Shudder subscription, Kent. I watched this weird sci-fi horror thing called Blood Machines. And as I was watching it, all I could think of was like, Kevin, this is for you.
Blood Machines, I'm in.
Dude, it was fucking weird. I don't even know how to describe it. It reminds me kind of like if Manos Cosmopolis did like a quick 3-episode sci-fi horror thing for Shudder. Like stylistically, it looks very similar to something that I could see him doing, but the story is fucking out there. It's weird. It's kind of doesn't make sense, but I'm glad I watched it just visually, and the music was pretty cool. If for nothing else, yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah.
I was wondering why that was like. I don't know if it was like watch it again or something. I was like, did I watch this at some point? Okay, that makes some sense. I'm happy that it's getting some use because I don't think I've used it since I got mad at Skinamarink.
I've been also going back and finally getting a chance to watch Channel Zero. So I finally finished season 1, which was interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I feel mixed on it. Like, I liked some of the things, and some of the things I think could have been done better. But I'm about 3/4 of the way through season 2, and season 2 is fucking awesome. So,
you know what? I'm really curious what your take is once you finish season 2. If
okay, so thanks for ruining it for me. Now I know. Oh, it goes downhill is what you're saying.
No, because I think you're past the point where I felt it went downhill. So you might enjoy it more than I did. And then season 3, I think, is The Door, and I really, really liked The Door season. I haven't seen the 4th one. So I don't know. I'm really curious. I hope you do like it because, geez, what the hell is his name? John Carroll Lynch.
Yeah. I was like, I saw him. I immediately thought, I was like, oh, I know Kent watched this for sure. Then,
and his daughter is I'm doing horrible names tonight, but the daughter of was it Durham's daughter?
Forsyth, William Forsyth's daughter. Yeah.
Forsyth. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't realize that, but yeah, I can see it now. Now that I look at her.
Yeah. So, have you ever seen Channel Zero, Kevin?
No.
There are like 6 episodes. They're probably like 40, 45 minutes long. There's only 6 episodes per season, so you can easily get through it. And they're what, like creepypasta?
Yeah, they're all based on creepypastas.
I don't know.
I don't know creepypasta.
It's kind of just
like
What's creepypasta?
urban legends.
Like Slender Man is a creepy. It's kind of like, I guess the easiest way for me to describe it, which is probably inaccurate, is like community generated horror stories attempted to be turned into urban legends.
Yeah. It's a really stupid name, though.
So, like, stuff 12-year-old girls look up on YouTube?
Yes.
That is...
While eating
that is exactly
creepypasta.
what it is, Kevin. Good call.
Yeah. Okay. I'm all about guilty pleasures.
I remember when it was coming out, when it was out, people were saying, and I don't know if Ken would agree with this, but it's definitely different. People were saying that it was a better version of American Horror Story than American Horror Story was.
Right, and it wasn't. It was just, I think American Horror Story was so mainstream that you always have the people that revolt against mainstream and are like, well, this is better. And no, not really. It's just a little different. On a lower budget, significantly lower budget.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they definitely didn't have Ryan Murphy's budget.
But it's entertaining for what it is. And, like I said, you can probably get through everything in about 4 hours per season. So.
Yep, that's on
Shudder. That's on Shudder? Okay, check it out.
And that was it for me. That was all. I just wanted to, definitely want to recommend Blood Machines for you if you haven't seen it, Kevin. And I don't know if it's. I don't think it's worth talking about, but I think it's an interesting watch at least once.
Is it something I can watch with Raylene, or is she just going to roll her eyes and hate it?
It's out there.
All right, then I'll show it to her. Anything that she will hate, I am
just
all
make sure you tell her Chris recommended.
I mean, as it was, she was swearing at Kevin during possession, so it was cool. Shit.
Yeah, well, you should have thought about that before you watched a Kevin pick with your wife.
I regret nothing. So, what have you watched, Kevin?
No. Okay, so I So what I've seen recently, I've seen 4 movies this year, and yesterday I went to the theater and saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and me and my stepfather went. He wanted to see it a lot, and so he wanted to see it in the theater, and we did Mother's Day dinner and at like 3 o'clock, and we were gonna go to the 4 o'clock showing, but we were that would have been cutting it close. Also, my brother's birthday was yesterday, so we kind of do Mother's Day and my brother's birthday at the same time. So we ended up going to the 6:15 show, which was the 3D showing, and we kind of just went because of the timing of it all, and it was incredible. It was, I mean, like the movie, I'd say it's like, 8.5 out of 10, which is really good, I'd say, but like that's just the movie, but like with the special effects, it was an incredible experience. I'm not like big into the 3D thing, but I've seen 3 of them since Avatar 2, so I don't know, that's 6 months. I've seen 3 3D
Krista and
movies
I are
in the
going to see
theater,
that
so
next weekend.
uh, yeah, it's fun. I love James Gunn. I love the Suicide Squad that he did, and I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I thought it was going to be overrated because everyone loved it. I never heard of it. It's like, oh, it's a Marvel movie. And like, I didn't really watch those movies at the time. So when I did see it, I was like, whoa, holy shit, that's good. It's only everyone has said it, but um, the second one I think doesn't have that same oomph because you loved Guardians of the Galaxy so much, so you're excited going into Guardians of the Galaxy 2, is what my thing is, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Um, so like the story is that, James Gunn got in some trouble and Marvel kind of dropped him, and they were going to make another Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and the cast wouldn't do it without James Gunn, and so he kind of had this, well, fuck you, I can do whatever I want. Um, and he did, but it wasn't in a flagrant way. It worked really well. It's good if you're going to go see it. I don't want to blow it up, but it is definitely one of the better Marvel movies, not only since Endgame, but I would say, since Infinity War, and it's probably a top five Marvel film for me. So uh, that was awesome, and I'm excited for you to go see it. And outside of that, I watched. I'll just talk about where I'm at in my collection recently. I think it was on Aronofsky last time. I watched today Nightbreed because I'm on the bees. So Clive Barker, which I saw that not too long ago, a few months ago for the podcast as your pick, Chris, and uh, man, I still love it. It's to bring it up for 3 podcasts in a row.
Oh, that warms my
Nightbreed,
heart, Kevin.
so good. Yeah, so good, so good. And then I watched The Squid and the Whale by Noah Baumbach because my collection is, I like, it's a good representation of things I like. Hour and a half indie comedy that is sad and hilarious. And then I'm one more away from Michael Bay, which I am ridiculously excited about. So I have almost all of his movies. So yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Um, I I haven't been watching a lot of movies. We had like the NFL draft, I don't know, almost a month ago now at this point. The NBA playoffs have been happening, and I try to watch like every single game because it's kind of like my last little joy of basketball for months, and I do miss that stuff. Um, so between that and Dead Island 2, the video game, coming out at some point in April, and then Redfall recently coming out. So Dead Island 2 is a zombie game, Redfall is a vampire game. I have been really busy, and then I had the idea to do the fucking spreadsheet. I have not gotten shit done. Like, that's kind of been my life, and movie-wise, I did show... I rewatched with Raylene Old, and I can't remember the other movie that we just recently watched. As far as anything new for me, the only thing is Infinity Pool, which, Chris, you haven't seen yet,
Yeah,
right?
no, I haven't seen it yet.
It is... I don't want to say it's completely bonkers by any means. Like, for me, I liked the first third to first half of it better than I liked the latter parts of it. But there's still parts that I liked. It just, this is definitely a movie. I think Kevin can agree because he watched it and him and I talked about it. This is really about a movie that is going to come down to your fucking personal taste in the movies. How well you're really going to like it and how much you want to, I don't know, read into it. Would you agree with that, Kevin?
Yeah, it's my favorite movie of the year, but to be fair, I've only seen 4 movies. But yeah, absolutely. Jamesy Wamesy. Mia Goth kills it. Her performance, she just grows on you more and more throughout the movie. She's definitely, I love Alexander Skarsgård, but she's the,
she's killing it right
she's
now.
So, yeah, she's killing it. That performance is top notch. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the movie's such a mixed bag of things. It's hard to put your finger on it. It was I've seen 2 movies in the theater. One Guardians of the Galaxy, the other Infinity Pool, and yeah, it's probably not. It's going to be on the top of my list for a while, but I don't. I don't know if it's going to make the top 10 at the end of the year, but it definitely could. It's going to be on the top for a while because it's kind of that specific taste of films because it is. It's a little bit bonkers, I guess, but not. I guess maybe Mia Goth's character is more bonkers than the movie itself.
Yes, I mean
it's not as crazy as Possessor.
No. It's I don't know. It's just its own flavor of ice cream, no doubt about it. Some people,
sure.
If you look at IMDb, there's like a lot of like 8s and 9s, and then there's like lots of 1s and 2s. So it's really a love it or hate it type of film, I think. And yeah, I find myself somewhere kind of in the middle. I liked it more than I disliked it. That's for sure. I'm happy I bought it.
Bought it too.
The other thing I really wanted to bring up was initially I heard a lot of good things about the new Evil Dead movie, but now that I've been like reading about it, it sounds kind of like people are more disappointed in it than anything. Have you guys read more positive, or have you not read much or anything?
I've heard more positive and read more positive, but I like when it first came out and like all the reviews are coming out, people were fucking praising it. And now I will say that I have heard some negative shit more recently. But the only person I know I take that back. Of the 2 people I was just talking about who both shit on Scream 6, one loved Evil Dead, one hated it. So, but the person who hated it loved the remake. The Fade Alvarez one. And the other one hated the remake. So, I mean, that should kind of give you an idea of where they're coming from.
Okay. It sounds like the location works. Like, that was, like, the common thread in, like, a lot of the IMDb reviews was, like, people said the location worked, but a lot of the complainers said it was kind of boring and plotting. They kind of expected more from it based on budget or whatever. So, I don't know. At first, I kind of wanted to go to the theater to see it, but I've tempered my expectations to a point where I'm just waiting for it to hit streaming at this point.
Yeah, I missed it too. I have a friend who saw it, and he said, and I actually respect his opinion a lot. He introduced me to Possession. I think he told me about Bone Tomahawk. So like we have that. I mean, he told me about Possessor too. He was like, "You should check out Possessor. You probably dig that." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this movie's definitely cool." So he said that it was fun. It was bloody. It was better as a horror film than an Evil Dead, and it's kind of generally what I've heard that it works better as a horror film than an Evil Dead movie. Whatever that means. Yeah, people absolutely loved it. The online chatter, my movie groups, and then there's the opposite toxic negativity towards it. So you never, it. I was like, I'm not going to go see it in the theater. I kind of missed it. If it's playing in the drive-in and I get a chance to see it there, I think that would be kind of cool. I do want to see it. I'm definitely interested in it. But yeah, I don't know. I liked the remake too, but I saw that well after and heard good things about it, and I like it, but it's also kind of not an Evil Dead movie at the same time.
Without Bruce Campbell, it just kind of exists.
Yeah, and just it didn't have any of the. I don't know. It was meant to be more serious horror, which I feel like that's what I hear about Evil Dead Rise too. I feel like I don't hear that it's campy or funny. It's meant to be a straight. Like I hear they give up the blood, and it's and the gore in it. So to some extent,
Yeah,
so
I've heard the same.
I hear it's fun. So I mean, really, if it's fun and it's entertaining, what more could you want?
Right. I mean, yeah, I agree. All right. Yeah, that's all I got. I really haven't been very active in my watching, but I will.
All right, so there we go, people. Next month we will be back, and we are calling that the Terrible Twos podcast, where we will be talking about our 5 favorite number 2s in the series, either number 2 within the whole series or just the sequel to a 2-part series, and our 5 most reviled number 2s in the series. So there you go. Kevin and Kent, it was a pleasure as always.
Oh yeah, same here.
Thank you guys for not spamming us with all of your opinions when we get them wrong, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, have a good night.
See ya.